Parsha Maseh. Maseh means journeys. Journeys. Okay? It is the final Parsha of Bamidbar, as Rebbe said. And it covers 4 topics. 4 topics. Journeys. Borders. Refuge. And inheritance. 4 topics. And we have the last words of Hashem to the children of Israel in this 4th portion. Okay, so there's 4 topics. The first is journeys. The second is the second is borders. Borders. The third is refuge. And the 4th is inheritance. Okay? If we back off of this and just look big picture and think about that, tell me that that does not say something, if that's not a picture of our own life. Our journeys, the borders that we have in our lives, or the boundaries that we have in our lives. How we take refuge, whether we do, if we can. How we don't do or don't. And then what is our inheritance? 4 things. I found it very interesting that as I was studying this, that there are 42 spots for their journeys. 42 spots. 3 mountains, something like, 3 mountains, 2 rivers, or 3 rivers, 3 bodies of water. Let me see, hold on. Let me not misquote this. Let me get to my notes. But what I found very, very interesting in all of this is that both Christians and Jews, the rabbis, teach that these journeys are symbolic of our own personal journeys. Both Christians and the rabbis teach that. How they teach it is a different story, but they both teach the same idea that this is reflective of our personal journeys. And that a spiritual journey is actually 42 steps. 42 steps. Interesting, huh? Now, when we look at these 42 places, it begins in the heart of Egypt, in a city named Ramses.
42.
Yes.
6 times 7.
42.
That's 6 days.
Yes,
and
it
the 7th is Shabbat.
Yes, it is. So, right here.
Interesting.
So we have 3 mountains, 3 wildernesses mentioned. And here's the thing that's interesting, is that if you look at the 3 in Hebrew, if you look at the name of the 3 wildernesses, it's a wordplay. It's a wordplay. They all 3 sound almost exactly the same. But they're 3 wildernesses. 3 wildernesses. Okay? The story is broken with little narratives here and there when we're reading the journeys. Now, if you've got a Bible, I almost guarantee you that in a study Bible that you own somewhere, it'll have a map plotting the course of this. I'm going to tell you, it's bogus. Because other than the mountains, we don't know where these places are. So, let that sink in at what I said at the very beginning. If this is symbolic of our own personal lives, there may be points that we understand in our life certain things. But for the most part, life is a mystery. Life can be unpredictable. And if you look at the meanings of the names, it has some very interesting meanings of each of these locations. Though we don't know the locations, each one has a meaning. Okay? So, that's not what I wanted to share on. Thought I'd just throw that out there and let you think about that. And before you ask me, well, what's the meanings? Pull out your dictionary and do your own study. There we go.
Good for you.
All right? There you go. There's your homework. There you go. Reading the Torah portion and doing some Hebrew studies. Okay? When we look at this, I actually found, when I was studying this week's Torah portion, it's a question that lingers out there. And it's very funny that Rabbi chose the topic that he chose to talk about, because he talked about the scales on Paul's eyes. But what about the thorn in his flesh? What was it? It's in this week's Torah portion. Interesting. It's in this week's Torah portion. Also in this week's Torah portion, we have a very interesting conversation about some cities. How many cities did the Levites have in the land?
48.
48 cities. 48 cities. Daniel, I'll throw something else out on you on the journeys, Rabbi. So, between Pesach and Shavuot, what do we do? The counting of the Omer, right? Omer. What is the purpose of the counting?
To count up.
No, to bring down.
It's a count up to the receiving of the Torah.
Yes, it's a count up, but mystically, it is the bringing down of certain energies. These journeys, now listen to what I'm about to say, is the elevation of Israel up. Just like Abraham went down into Egypt, they are leaving Egypt and going up to Israel, the land of Canaan. So the journeys is actually a refining of yourself, or a building of your own character. That's what it is. A refining of your soul, or a building of your character, however you want to say it. But the bottom line is it is the elevation of the nation of Israel, not of the man, but of a nation. I'm sorry. It's either refining your soul or defining your character. Yeah, redefining it or purifying your character. How do you want to say it? Refining. Yeah. You know? So it is a spiritual journey of elevation. That's the point. It is a refining and development of your spiritual self to be exalted in a greater position. Yes. Yes. But we would think that the final exaltation would be at Mount Sinai, the receiving of the Torah. But no. No, it's not. The beginning is in Egypt. In the heart of Egypt. In Ramses. If you read this, the first part, the first 3 verses is all in Egypt before they cross the Red Sea. So our journey, where does our journey begin? In confusion. and chaos. Okay? So there's a lot there. There's a lot there. Also in the inheritance, well, before we get to the inheritance, let me get back to the cities. You were right, Kefa. How many cities were there?
48.
48 cities. How many cities were refuge cities?
6.
6.
48.
Okay. Yep.
3 were inside Israel and 3 were outside.
Well, they were all inside of Israel, but you got east and west of the Jordan. Okay. What was interesting to me is that when I looked at this was how many times it says, and God said unto Moses, God said unto Moses, and God said.
Well, that's everyone.
I think I counted it up, and in the book, in this book, it's like 35 times. Okay. And he said unto Moses, or he spoke unto Moses. Like 35 times. That's very significant. Also, as I was studying, I realized that today is the last time that we will see that God spoke to a man directly. Because Moses is the only man he had panay to panay, face to face. Every other prophet saw it in one of 3 ways: dreams, visions, or trances. Only one of 3 ways to see them. So today is the end of an era. We will see next week when we go into Devarim, it will say these are the words of Moses, not the words of God. These are the words of Moses. So God no longer speaks to Israel. So what was the last thing he said to Israel? Have we talked about that? It's the last thing God said to Israel.
Don't pray again.
Everything you said?
Don't pray again.
Yeah, because he had prayed like 515 times at that time. He was trying to get back into the land, and that's what don't do.
That's not
Don't
what he
ask
said.
again.
Very interesting what he has to say to them. Very interesting. We'll look at that. Rabbi's already digging through trying to find it.
No.
Got him provoked.
I have an idea.
You got an idea?
I have an idea.
Okay.
I'll probably say, don't provoke me. Because that's all Israel was doing to the Lord, provoking them.
There's no way to the last thing he said to them. It leads to that, though. It does lead to that. It's interesting. And then we got the inheritance. Inheritance. It's very interesting that the inheritance here is about land. It's not about the inheritance per se. And as I was reading this, it really jumped off the page at me of what was happening with the inheritance. So, out of all the things I've asked, which one do you want me to talk about?
All of them.
All of them. Okay. When we look at the inheritance, let's start backwards. When we look at the inheritance, last week we learned that there are 5 daughters. Right? You remember us reading about that? We kind of just threw it out there and said we'd talk about it this week. Well, I'm talking about it this week. Okay? This is how the Torah portion ends. And let's look at it. So turn to chapter 36. Chapter 36. Numbers. Thank you. Here's an interesting thing. Hold that. Hold your place there. Turn over to Vayikra, the last chapter of Vayikra. Leviticus. Hold your space right there in Numbers and turn over to Leviticus chapter 26. 27. Leviticus 27. I said 26. You there? Okay, let's look at Leviticus 27. This is how the book ends. It says, "These are the mitzvot which Adonai commanded Moses for Bnei Israel on Mount Sinai." That's Leviticus 27, verse 34. Right? Now, turn over to Numbers 36, 13. Last verse. You ready? It says, "These are the mitzvot and judgments that Adonai gave Moses, gave by Moses' hand to Bnei Israel on the plains of Moab at Jericho along the Jordan." Do you see a difference? Coming out of Leviticus, we have just the mitzvot. Coming out of Numbers, we have judgments and mitzvot. And they're given by the hand of Moses. Instead of where it says over here that he commanded Moses. You see that? So there is a difference between these two in how God used Moses and what he spoke to the people. Remember, I told you that Moses' role in Numbers is different than all other books before this. Before, he's been the primary leader. Now, everything's transitioning over. We're seeing the changing of the guard in Numbers. And Deuteronomy, like Rabbi alluded to, is the last speech of Moses before he dies. Okay? So, let's look at this. Chapter 36, starting at verse 1, it says, "The heads of the ancestral families of the children of Gilead, son of Machir, son of Manasseh, from the sons of Joseph, came and spoke before Moses and before the princes of the chiefs of the fathers of Bnei Israel." Okay, so a lot of stuff saying that the chief leaders of the tribe came and spoke to Moses. Okay? And the princes of Bnei Israel. So it wasn't just Moses, it was the princes as well. Okay? Now, listen to what their question is. It says, "My Lord, Adonai commanded to give the land by lot as an inheritance to Bnei Israel." This goes back to borders. Okay? Because after the journeys, God then tells Moses what the north, south, east, and western borders are of the land. He outlines the borders of the nation. Okay? Of what he was giving them. And so, this is what they're talking about here. "My Lord Adonai commanded to give the land," and in that command of the borders, he tells Moses to select 12 men that will divide the land. You know what's so interesting about that? The first man that God chose to divide the land, who would you think it is? Daniel. Who would you think it is? Don't know.
Joshua?
No. Who would you think? How many would say Joshua if I said no? If I didn't say no. It was Caleb. Caleb. He picked Caleb from the tribe of Yehudah to represent Yehudah. Now you go, okay. He wasn't an Israelite. He was a Canaanite. So the very first selection to select Israel's land inheritance was a Gentile who had come over to the God of Israel. So it shows that even from the very beginning, the Gentile played a role in God's selection. I can't say we because I'm Jewish, but I mean literally by blood I'm Jewish. And some of you are too. But the point is that the Goys, they always have a role. God always had a role for them in this plan. Okay? Now, let's look at this. What was their concern? It says, my Lord Adonai commanded to give the land by lot as an inheritance to Bnei Israel. My Lord was also commanded by Adonai to give the inheritance of our brother, I don't know how to say that name, right? Yeah, that's the one. That's him. To his daughters. Now listen to what they say. And this gets pretty intense. They say, if they become wives of men from other tribes of Israel, their inheritance will be taken from the ancestral inheritance and added to the inheritance of the tribe into which they marry. So what is the leader's concern?
Like the land, like the inherit state in that tribe?
Yes. They're concerned about the land inheritance being passed to other tribes. Okay? They're not arguing that the women shouldn't get the land. They're arguing what happens, or they're questioning what happens to the land. Why? Because land transference was through men. But now that we've got daughters that have land inheritance, what of them? What of that land? Now listen to what they say. If they become wives of men from other tribes of Israel, their inheritance will be taken from our ancestral inheritance and added to the inheritance of the tribe into which they marry. So it will be deducted from our allotment of our inheritance. When the Jubilee comes, listen to this. When the Jubilee comes, their inheritance will be added to the inheritance of the other tribe into which they married and deducted from the ancestral tribe. The law of Jubilee, of the year of Jubilee, is the forgiveness of debts. Has nothing to do with land inheritance. So it would not convert back, because once the year of Jubilee came, the land would then be transferred to another tribe if the women get married to another tribe. Okay? Now look what he says. Okay? Verse 5. Then Moses commanded Bnei Israel, at the mouth of Adonai, what the tribe of the descendants of Joseph is saying is correct. Okay? It says, this is the word that Adonai commands for the daughters of Z-Man. Yeah. Yeah, the Lophahah. That's him. They may become wives to whomever they please as long as they marry within the family of the tribe of their father. In other words, they can marry anybody within the tribe of, which the tribe is this? Manasseh? Yeah, Manasseh. As long as they marry within the tribe of Manasseh, they can marry any man that what they want. So what happens then? It says, as long as they marry within their tribe of their father, so no inheritance may pass from tribe to tribe among Bnei Israel. Each one of Bnei Israel will keep the inheritance of the tribe of his ancestors. Every daughter receiving an inheritance in one of the tribes of Bnei Israel should marry within the family of her father's tribe, so that Bnei Israel will each possess the inheritance of his fathers. There is a fallacy that is told that we believe that the tribes could not intermarry. That's not true. The tribes could intermarry. The rule of thumb, though, the exception to the rule is a woman who owns a land inheritance should marry inside her tribe so that the land stays in the tribe.
And that was violated too, of course.
Of course it was.
Of course.
Okay? So every daughter receiving an inheritance, verse 8, in one of the tribes of Bnei Israel should marry within her family of her father's tribe so that Bnei Israel would each possess the inheritance of his fathers. No inheritance may pass from tribe to another tribe, for each tribe of Bnei Israel is to keep its inheritance. Okay? Verse 10 is the most beautiful part of all of this. So Z-Man's daughters did what Adonai commanded Moses. His daughters, and it gives their names, married sons of their uncles. They married within the families of the sons of Manasseh, son of Joseph, and their inheritance remained within the tribe of their ancestral family. See that? So, if you ever hear someone say they could not intermarry within the tribes, you now know the truth. That's not true. They could. But women with land inheritance should not intermarry with another tribe because of the land inheritance. What's very interesting is if you go back and read that story, you will find that they went and tried to find uncles. And God actually gives a list of 4 different categories of people to receive land. And the 4th and final one is a kinsman. A kinsman is anybody. Now, this was interesting to me because in real estate, if you die or a person dies, according to Texas law, land cannot, a house cannot be unowned. Someone has to own the structure of a house. If a person dies without a will, in the state of Texas, there is a list of people that they will begin to contact. It'll first start with your sons, then your grandsons, then your great-grandsons, and your great-great-grandsons, and then it'll go to your aunts or uncles, cousins, brothers, and they'll go back for generations looking to give your house to someone within your family before the state takes it. And that principle is set in place here in last week's Torah portion. That with the land, because it is to remain in the house of the fathers, it stays within the kinsman. So even our law today is affected by this. God's judgment on this matter. Isn't that beautiful?
Mm-hmm.
Texas did something and didn't even realize they were keeping Torah. You know? So.
Because it's the Christian thing to do.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep. It's got to stay in the family.
It's got to be Christian.
Okay. Any questions on this land inheritance?
Yeah, I said it.
I think it's a beautiful thing when we think about it because this was women's rights before women's rights existed. What people don't realize is how revolutionary this was. Because in the ancient world, women could not own land. Huh? Yeah, they had to, and here was and this is the beauty of what Moses did. Because Moses could have said, no, you don't get anything. But Moses was sensitive enough to be able to say, let me go and inquire, because I don't know. It shows some beautiful leadership quality. To be able to say, I don't know. You know how many leaders won't say that today? They'll make an answer up instead of just saying, I don't know.
Yeah, they'd rather give you a wrong answer, but they're going to give an answer.
They're going to give an answer.
Yeah, they will.
I found out when I started telling people I didn't know, it got them more upset. What do you mean you don't know?
That's what I said.
That's what I said, I don't know. Well, you study all the time. Yeah, but I haven't studied that. If that's your question, why don't you go study that? You know. Okay. Now the cities of the Levites in chapter 35, this is very interesting because historically speaking, refuge cities existed in other countries. The concept of a refuge city was not something unique to Torah. What was unique was who was protected in the city. Also, what is unique is what is considered a city. Because there were two types of cities. There were walled cities and unwalled cities.
Right.
And here it is laid out what is considered a Levitical city. Because it's not just where they lived. It also was 1,000 feet each direction, north, south, east, and west.
I heard it was 2,000 cubits.
Different people say, there's two recordings. One says 2,000 cubits and one says 1,000.
Okay.
So there's a question as to which one it is. So it depends on which source you're reading.
Depends if it was the midget king or the giant king.
King, yeah, exactly. The normal man or the big man, you know. So the point is that the land around the city was just belonged to Israel. And here's the thing that's so interesting, is that if you'll study this out, it goes all the way through Torah, all the way through Kings, Chronicles, these cities, and the discussion of these cities. Very interesting. And no matter what happened, these cities was never traded. They were never borrowed against. They could never be traded.
Question.
Yes.
Do you have any idea what the distance was or the maximum distance allotted between each of these cities? That way there, you always had like, you know, well, worst case scenario, all I gotta do is run 10 miles over here to, you know, Horizon.
Well, here's the thing. There was only 6 refuge cities, 3 on each side.
Yeah.
So that was scattered throughout the depth of Israel, north and south.
Right, but there was 42 total.
Yes, but not all. There was only 6 cities that were refuge.
So again, was there a minimum distance?
No, there was no required minimum distance, but if you look at it, I think if you look at the placement of them, they're like, one's in the north, one's in like central, and one's in the south.
Yeah.
So there's.
So let's just divide 200 miles, roughly.
It depends on where you live.
30
Now here's
miles,
the question:
take worst case
who was
scenario.
protected in the refuge cities?
Accidentally.
Accidentally killed. Why? Now here is the uniqueness of Torah.
Because iron and wood don't go well together.
Yeah. Here is the uniqueness of Torah, is that the Torah says that if what we would call a manslaughter means unintentional killing of someone. If someone unintentionally killed, the one killed, their brother had the right to kill you, to spill your blood. This is what is called blood feuds. And these still exist to this very day. Blood feuds still exist. Okay? Arabs still carry out blood feuds. The mafia carries out blood feuds. Okay? Give them long enough, they'll kill each other off. Yep, the Hatfields and McCoys. Blood feuds. This is exactly what God ended, was the blood feud. That's what was so unique about these cities. Because if a manslaughterer made it to this city, any one of these cities, he had to be determined to be guilty. And how was he determined? He had to have 2 to 3 witnesses. The one that was going to kill him had to have 2 to 3 witnesses. Now, because he killed, if he ever went outside of the city and the blood relative saw him, he still had rights to kill him.
Unless the high priest died.
That is the next phase of it. At the death of the high priest, all manslaughterers were released to be able to go back to their lands. Why? Does that even make sense?
Why wouldn't it make sense?
God.
Just a means of accomplishing a goal.
Yeah.
The death of the high priest.
The Kohen Gadol, once he died, all that had been guilty of manslaughter were released, or allowed to be released if they wanted to leave and go back to their ancestral homes.
Was that seen as atonement?
Okay, so that's what the Kabbalah said.
Oh, I was gonna, yeah, I remember, yeah.
The
yeah,
Kabbalah
yeah,
said
yeah,
that.
yeah,
The Torah doesn't say that, but the Kabbalah
yeah.
says
Kabbalah does that, yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. What I've heard is that the nation itself is mourning, and because it is a communal nation, the death of the high priest, everybody felt it. So whatever your woes was against another man, you had to release them of that woe.
Well, I mean, think about Yeshua being the high priest, so he
Yeah.
got released, everybody's released at that moment in history.
Yeah,
So that's really tied to, again, Kabbalah.
yeah. So what, Ma?
Was the atonement that the high priest made for the
That's what the Kabbalah said, yes, that his death is an atonement. And they also go as far as to say is here's the thing that's interesting in that conversation is why were there what the rabbis say is that the high priest has to atone because he didn't pray. That's what they say. They say that because there was accidental death under his watch, he's responsible for it.
Oh, that's right, yeah, because he was supposed to sit there and pray. He was supposed to pray that nobody be killed under my watch or something. Yeah, I remember
Very
that.
interesting.
That was it.
Yeah. So, but the uniqueness of these cities is that, and as far as Torah law goes, is that when the person leaves his land inheritance to go to one of these cities, do you realize what has happened to him?
Yeah, he's ostracized. He's a loner.
He's in exile.
exile, whatever.
He's exiled.
What's the Hebrew word, Rabbi? Geulah. Yep.
Yep. He's in exile. So all the days that he lives in the refuge city, he's exiled from his own land. The idea is, and this is something similar to what you brought up, Daniel, is how far away it is because the Torah law is that if you run into him, you have a right to kill him. But if he flees away a quarter of the country, what's the chance that you're going to bump into him?
Not less.
You know, even if you all go to Jerusalem for Pesach,
Busy place.
it's very unlikely you're going to run into that person. You see what I'm saying? So it's there's some really interesting concepts around this. So how does this tie to us today? How does this tie to us today? Daniel did the whole Mashiach thing. Oh, there's one other thing I want to share with you about the journeys too.
We're still going backwards?
I'm going backwards. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm bouncing around
Just
now.
checking.
Okay. I'm doing a true Jewish thing and I'm bouncing. So,
Circular logic.
when you read the Midbar, okay, it took them a year. It begins at year 1 and ends in year 40. Okay? There's 38 years that is silence in there. We don't know what happened. Right? Yeshua, when he was a baby, where did he go?
Egypt.
Egypt. And then we know nothing about him for
12 years.
30 years.
You said when he was a baby.
He went to Egypt.
Okay. And then He is also a notation where he was
He's
in
12.
12 and then 30. I get
There,
it.
up until 30,
Right.
we have
so
silent
he
years.
was in the school of Shammai or.
That's what they say. But the bottom line is we don't know. They're mysterious years of what happened.
That was typical of any 18-year-old.
Here's my point. Here's my point, Daniel. Hold on.
Studying.
The Mashiach has to go exactly through everything Israel went through. So just like Israel's got silent years, the Mashiach has to have silent years. If you don't.
Oh, interesting.
Just like Israel was called out of Egypt, the Mashiach had to be called out of Egypt. So there's parallels in all of this. Just like they wandered in the wilderness for 40 years, what did he do after he was dipped in the mikvah?
40 days in the
40 days where? In the wilderness. It's all a picture of this. Okay? So, Daniel already brought out how Mashiach being the high priest, dying for our sins, etc., etc. This is what these cities represent. That in exile, even in exile, there is an atonement for your mistakes. Okay? The borders of Israel are very interesting. But I want to show you something else. I want to show you one more thing, and that's it. I'm going to stick a fork in it. Y'all yawning,
Daniel?
leaning
Yes.
backwards,
Yes. Yes.
blinking at me like this.
That's me. Not that I'm bored, just, you know, 'cause I'm not.
Okay? I want to show y'all something.
I'm never bored in this room.
Let me get my notes on this. Right quick. Turn to Numbers chapter 33. I was reading this, and it blew my mind when I read this. Okay, you ready? Everybody there? Everybody in Numbers 33. I'm in the dark 33.
I
Okay?
hear you, man.
33. Now this is what, let's look at verse 55. Well, let's start at 54. No, you know what? Let's start at 50.
Vayimeriel Adonai El Moshe.
In the plains of Moab, by the Jordan at Jericho, say, speak unto the children of Israel and say unto them, when you pass over the Jordan into the land of Canaan, then you shall drive out, okay, verse 22, then you shall drive out all the inhabitants of the land from before you and destroy all their figured stones, and destroy all their molten images, and demolish all their high places. Notice how many things they were to do. 3. Do you see that? They were to destroy all the figured stones, destroy all the molten images, and demolish all their high places. Verse 53, and you shall drive out the inhabitants of the land and dwell therein, for you are to have, for unto you I have given the land to possess it. And you shall inherit the land by lot. This goes back to what we were talking about with the inheritance of the daughters. A lot by lot, according to your families. To the more you shall give, the more increase of inheritance, and to the fewer thou shalt give, the less inheritance. Whosoever the lot falleth to any man, that shall be his, according to the tribes of your fathers shall you inherit. Verse 55, listen to this. But if you do not drive out the inhabitants of the land from before you, then shall those that you let remain of them be as thorns in your eyes, and as pricks in your side, and they shall harass you in the land wherein you dwell. Here's the thing that's interesting. The thorns in the eyes, this is the only place in Torah, in all of Tanakh, this word is found. So we have no clue what that means.
Really?
It's the only place. So we're clueless. However, it says, and pricks in your side. You see that? Now, I want you to turn to Joshua chapter 23. 13. So God told them, if you don't get the people out of the land, they're going to be thorns in your side, right?
Pricks in the side.
Pricks in the side.
Much like today.
Okay? Read Joshua 23:13. Who's got it? 23:13. So God, through Moses, has told the people, if you don't do this. Now, here's the thing that's interesting. Okay, you ready? Is there are basically two documents that track or that are considered primary sources are the authorities of the mitzvot. Maimonides is one, and then there's another one called Sefer I forgot the name of it now. It's considered the other one. Usually, always, when you're studying, Maimonides is at the top. He's the one that's referred to all over the place. Okay, most time when people say this is the 15th commandment, it's usually from Maimonides' list. Here's what's interesting. Those two authorities are split on this. One says that this is a mitzvot, and the other one says it's not a mitzvot, it's a warning. Rambam says that to destroy all the people in the land is not a mitzvot, it's a warning. That if you don't do this, this is the consequence of it. Very interesting. Okay? But look at this. Who's got Joshua? Read it loudly, please.
Know for certain that Hashem your Elohim shall no longer drag these nations out from before you.
Whoa, 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 whoa. Who will not do what?
The Lord.
Will not what?
Will no longer drag these nations out from before you.
Okay, so Joshua's gone into the land, conquered the land, but there comes a point at the end that God is saying, that's it. I'm not, because of what you've done, I'm not going to drive these out before you anymore. So what happens?
And they shall be snares and traps.
Snares?
Snares and traps to you, and a whip on your sides, and thorns in your eyes, until you perish from this good land which Hashem your Elohim has given you.
Does it not? Does anybody's translation says pricks in the side or thorns in the side? Does anyone says that? Anyone's?
Mine says thorns in your eyes.
Thorns in your eyes. Okay? So, this is the fulfillment of what Hashem has said in our Parsha today. He's saying, that's it. I'm not driving them out anymore. Now they're going to be a problem for me. Okay? Look at Judges. Judges chapter 2, verse 3.
Two,
2:3. What does it say?
Wherefore I also said, I will not drive them out from before you, but they shall be a thorns on your sides, and their God shall be a snare unto you.
So the thorn in the side is their gods will be before you. Right? Okay. If you actually look at what Paul was saying over in 1 Corinthians, this is the exact verbiage that he was using. He's talking about the amount of revelation that he's got, that he has more than any other man, but in his bragging it brings him low. And then he says, but there's a thorn in my flesh, which Satan has sent to me. Okay? There is all kind of theological stuff in that statement. But let me just tell you this. This is what it's tying back to. His thorn is not blindness. It's not sickness. It's not ailments like Christianity has taught us. The thorns in his side are the gods of the people around him. Because that's what he's warring against. That's what he's fighting against. Their belief systems. He's reaching out to the Goyim to come into this fellowship of the Jews, and the hardest thing he's fighting against is their belief in their gods. That is the thorn in his flesh. Is their gods. Yes.
But I really use the
Scourges.
on the side and the thorns in the eyes.
Yeah. Okay? Now, you see that? Turn to Ezekiel. This is awesome.
Chapter
28, 24. Ezekiel 28, 24. Who wants to read it? Read it loud, please.
And there shall no longer be a pricking freer on a paving door for the house of Israel from among all who are around them, who despise them. And they shall know that I am the Master Hashem.
So Ezekiel is telling that in the future, when God's reigning, he's going to remove all of this. This is one of his promises. I'm going to remove all the thorns from your side. I'm going to remove all the other gods from Israel. It's a promise. Just like he stopped doing it because they wouldn't do their part, there is a time in the future where he will remove all other gods from the earth. Isn't that amazing? Now, let me show you one other thing. Turn to Luke. Luke, chapter 2, verse 34. Luke 2:34. Who has it? I'll read it. It says, and Simon blessed them and said unto Mary his mother, behold, this child is set for the falling and rising again of many in Israel, and a sign which shall be spoken against. In other words, this child will be a thorn in the side of Israel. Who's this child?
Sure.
Yeshua.
I have a footnote here that says that Simon is the first to acknowledge the suffering that will come to Yeshua and those connected to him.
Yes. He was an old prophet that was staying in the temple. And God had told him that he wouldn't die until he saw the Mashiach. And when he saw Yeshua, he died. He lays hands on him and he dies. That's a nice. Isn't it very interesting?
Very good, very good.
Very good. Any questions on this?
Is there going to be a test next week for them?
Oh yeah. I want to know what the names of the cities mean. They'll bring that in next week. Okay?
Whatever.
Whatever. See how y'all are?
There were business in there?
See?
Did you say it first? Whatever.
Let me show you one last thing, and this will be it, because I brought it up. What was the last words of Hashem that was spoken to Moses?
Oh, I was going to say it's finished.
Numbers 35. Chapter 35. Because Moses says in chapter 36 that God commanded this, but it's not God speaking, it's Moses speaking, saying that God commanded this. But the last words of God is literally about, okay, he is talking about the refuge cities and the murderers. Okay? Look at verse 31 of chapter 35 of Numbers. It says, "You are not to accept a ransom for the life of a murderer. He deserves to die, and he is to die. Do not receive a ransom for one who has fled to his city of refuge, allowing him to return to his land before the Kohen Gadol's death. You are not to pollute this. Listen to this. Listen closely. You are not to pollute the land in which you are. Blood pollutes the land, and no atonement can be made for the land polluted by bloodshed, except by the blood of the one who shed it. You are not to defile the land where you live, where I dwell, for I dwell amongst Bnei Israel." That's the last words that Hashem speaks. You are not to pollute the land. Is his last words.
Good explanation for why we're not in Israel.
It is.
Right?
Do not pollute the land.
We're definitely not worthy.
And look at what he says, verse 34. You are not to defile the land where you live, where I dwell, for I dwell amongst Bnei Israel. Here's the thing that is beautiful. The rabbis say that when God reestablishes, or God establishes himself in Jerusalem, that he will purify the land of Jerusalem. And that from the land of, or the land of Israel, not Jerusalem, the land of Israel, he will purify it. And once he purifies it, that holiness will then go around the world and purify the world. So that the whole world will be in position to feel and have the full the presence of God in the entire earth. But now, because the land is defiled, he's not there. So, we are in refuge. We are in the diaspora. We are in the gulag. But here's the thing, is that when they were getting ready to go into, when Babylon was coming to take them away, God told them, he says, I'll go with you. So guess what? We may be dispersed, but we're not alone. He's with us. We may not be able to sense or hear or perceive as the prophets of old have, but we still have the promise. Because he said, I'll never leave you, and I'll never forsake you. He's still with us. Okay? We just don't know the fullness of it. Because the earth is polluted. And I'm not talking about trash and radiation in the ocean either. Okay? I'm talking about blood spilled. Innocent blood being spilled. Okay? Any questions on any of this? Yes. You know what? Benson brought up last week that we should have a Q&A after each session.
Yeah, you did, no?
brought it up. So,
What are you here for?
if you guys,
I
listen,
agree.
if you guys want to ask questions, write the questions down while we're teaching, and at the end, we'll give you time, and you can ask your question.
Well, that's a fine time to tell us that. Should have said at the very beginning.
I know, huh? But from this point on, let's
Here's
do
a
that.
question. I
Okay?
ask anyway. Yeah.
Okay.
So we need to figure out the meanings of
The 42 spots, the 42 journeys, there's 42.
42 journeys?
And the name of the six cities within.
Okay.
That's the other assignment.
What?
60s?
He's talking about the cities of refuge. What are you saying?
No, I was just gonna ask, I heard a teacher once say about the word impure,
Yes.
and he said the word, I can't recall.
Tame.
But then he said the root word of the word impure in Hebrew is just simply means block.
Block?
Yeah.
Okay.
If you block, but I don't know if it's from the Lord's presence or just from understanding. So every time a person will not fulfill the commandments, will make it impure, which is just block. And I guess the other, what comes after that, the rituals will remove the block. And
Yeah.
He becomes
Tahor.
the opposite of impure.
Tahor.
Uh, Have you heard anything like that?
Yeah, because all impurity does is just that, it blocks us.
Is it just about right?
Yes.
It's
And
not-
Daniel, I found out where I talk about atonement and the meaning.
Kippur.
Yes. You know, we were discussing that a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
It's in the pale form. In the pale form, it means to white.
To white.
Yes. So, it has a dual meaning depending on the form of the word.
Culture defines everything.
Yeah, it
doesn't
does. It does.
So that was gonna be my second question, when we talk about the high priest dying.
Yeah, that's Kabbalistic, that's mystic.
That's Kabbalah. What about the rabbis? What would they say?
What? I didn't hear that.
What about the rabbis? What would they say about that?
About what?
About the high priest dying and then,
Well, the rabbis are the one that brought that forward. It's the Kabbalists who brought it forward, but the rabbis of the Talmud continue to bring it out about the high priest dying. Now to think that everybody believes that, not everybody believes that.
Yeah.
It's just like anything in Judaism. You know, you got one topic and you got 3 opinions on that topic.
So 3.
3,
wow.
10, 12
Two Jews, 3 opinions.
opinions. There's multiple opinions. So when we say Jews believe this, some Jews believe this.
Yeah.
Okay? Understand that in reference to that.
Sure.
There is no general overall, because within Judaism, there's no such thing as doctrine. There's no hard belief except one belief, that God is one. That's it.
Thank God.
That's the core of everything in Judaism, that God is one. If there is a doctrine, that's the only doctrine Judaism has. Everything else is up in the air. Does everybody believe in reincarnation? No. Do some believe in it? Yes. So any topic that we're talking about when we say they teach, just know some believe it. Not everybody. And that's to me, that's the beauty. Like if I like it, yeah, I like that. If I don't like it, whatever. Okay.
Quoting Robinson.
Yeah. Quoting Robinson, Allah. Whatever. Yes.
so on 12, on the number 12.
Okay.
I see 12 tribes, and Yeshua had 12 Talmidim, and on this parsha it mentions, I was trying to find it, 12 palms and 7.
Oh, that's at the place that they that was a yes.
So the 12, does that represent the 12 constellations?
Yes.
But you got to understand that numbers has always through time in different cultures had different meanings. Okay, and in Jewish thought and in other thoughts, the number 12 is a foundational number.
That's right.
Okay? Now, when you look at our government, the U.S. government used the Bible for the structure of our government. 3 branches, 12 representatives. Everything's in multiples of 12. Okay? So, because of the Christian influence in the Bible, these numbers are used also in our own governments. Okay? But is it foundational? Yes, because how many tribes are there? 12 tribes. That's the foundation of the nation. Okay? Now you can play with that and say, why 12? And people will do the whole math thing. 10 plus 2.
It's 3.
Yeah.
Did you run into anything on this study?
What? The 12?
The 12 and the 70?
I saw it, I didn't study it out. Yeah. I actually thought 70 palm trees, if I got 3.5 million people, 70 palm trees ain't jack. That was just my thought.
Remember, they're miraculous palm trees. They're huge palm trees.
Okay.
They're not just-
Oh, these are the giant palm trees.
Yeah,
huh?
yeah.
These are the giant palm trees. Okay.
And I'm just throwing that out there. I'm not saying I'm being facetious or sarcastic.
Yeah.
There's nothing about
I'm
that.
sure there's a bit
Considering there's droshes and
Yeah.
miracles that happened back then, why not?
Yeah.
70 pillars,
Yeah.
you know.
I read that.
Correction, 12
I
springs.
wasn't consummate.
Yeah, see. Again, depends on what you're reading or what material you're studying. What?
Correction, it was 12 springs of water and 70 date palms.
So I'm sure somebody said 1 spring for each tribe, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't a spring, it was a river.
Yeah. You see, so.
A river with 12 wash basins, if you will.
Yes.
Was the end of the book.
Yes.
Codes,
Yeah, there's all kinds of codes.
beachheads.
There's all kinds of, like, if you, like, the journeys, and all the rest of it. Oh, man. It talks about the pulling down, or the man rising up. This one's called. Or the nation, not a man, the nation. That's why it's an AC, not AC.
So you're doing, other what?
Any other questions?
Just turn up back to the fan.
Beth, can you turn off that fan? And let's do this.
You were asking about the cities, right? For us to find out the cities?
The names of the
Is that the
cities?
name of the cities? So we can put that question and give it to you?
No.
No, he already knows it.
You shouldn't have told them.
Thank you, Scotty.
That's what you said.
I
Signing.
said, write your questions, not my questions.
Well, you
That's
told me
right.
that. That's a question.
Your homework assignments is